Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
All right, welcome back, Wolf Pack. How you doing tonight? Let's see here. I'm already screwing up the slides. It's great. It's a great start to the show. All right, well, welcome back. This is the weekly news recap for the Dire Wolf Show. We come to you live from behind enemy lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. As always, great show for you tonight. Also the wrong date on the slides because, you know, that's the kind of show we do here. But first, before we go into my failings as a producer and streamer here, this show is only possible because of viewers like you, which I much appreciate. Especially big thanks to those of you that donate to us financially, including Kaylette, Ori Main, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke Garcia, Thundra Erican, the White Lion, the White Wolf, and the Timberwolf. Money is not the only way that you can give, though. We also appreciate you liking and subscribing to us on DLive, Twitch, YouTube, and anywhere else you might happen to find us. We appreciate you sharing links to our content on any social media that you happen to find yourself on, because we have no algorithms that help us do that for us. All right. Well, first story for the night. I'm already getting text messages from somebody. Okay. All right. So our first story tonight is a little update on an old story about Trump's Russia collusion, which I think, probably the story that defined the previous decade, in defining it so much as the most important thing that happened, and also the thing that was the most fraudulent thing that happened to the U.S. presidency by far. I'm not going to do a big recap on what all happened with the Steele Dossier. If you are not aware on the background information of that by now, I'm not going to be able to help you out on this show. So when Trump left office, he had left behind Durham, which is a person who was investigating the Russia collusion hoax. By the end of the Trump administration, it was found that basically everything in the Steele Dossier was fraudulently created, that perhaps the FBI, not perhaps, it was very clear, very evident that the FBI had illegally surveilled Trump using information that they knew to be fraudulent. And so Trump left behind Durham, who was investigating the investigators to see what the FBI knew, when did they know it, and did the FBI knowingly, illegally wiretap Trump and his associates. So the update tonight is that Durham's investigation obviously has not been covered very much the last year since Trump left office, because the media would much prefer that it didn't exist. But that doesn't mean that his work is not important. Not only because Durham's work will eventually fully vindicate Trump from all of the lies in the Steele Dossier, but also because it will continue to expose how corrupt and just awful the FBI and the government intel agencies really are, and how in bed these intel agencies are with the Democrat Party and the partisan media, along with private business interests such as big tech, and that all of these people have formed a sort of cabal, perhaps a state deep beneath the actual state. Some might call it a deep state. I wouldn't call it a deep state. Yeah, I would. But basically, the Durham investigation will uncover additional threads that point to, obviously, there is some kind of shadowy cabal behind everything, trying to make sure that Republicans never get office and protecting any Democrats that do. Let's see here. There are not accusations. Let's see here. Let me skip through that part. Christopher Steele, who was the originator of the Steele Dossier, which is the original bit of information that led to Trump being investigated for Russian collusion. Christopher Steele was funded by Hillary Clinton, GOP people who did not, the never Trumpers in the GOP, along with other Democrat operatives that funded Steele's dossier. Let's see here. Hillary and the Democrats used that opposition research that they had purchased as kind of a seed bit of information to give the FBI, which then allowed the FBI to take all of these lies, and now they've got to investigate them as, perhaps they're factual. Let's see here. Basically everything over the last 5-6 years has been found that the Steele dossier was 100% fictitious. A lot of that was debunked by the FBI themselves, trying in vain to investigate Trump on every possible avenue and finding nothing. No one was able to debunk the Steele dossier better than the FBI, that's for sure. And the reason why we're covering this tonight is because there was an update this week in Durham's investigation. The update we got this week was that Christopher Steele's main source for the factually inaccurate claims of the dossier, Igor Dachenkov. Dachenkov was charged on Thursday with 5 counts of making false statements to investigators regarding the source of the information he provided to Steele. Those lies that he is being charged with were the basis for the Trump dossier, providing those lies as operational intel to the FBI is a crime. So basically, again, Steele, after being paid by the Democrats, by Hillary Clinton, created what was going to be opposition research against Trump, which is what campaigns typically do to each other. They'll kind of put out lies about each other, and that's you can have your opinion on that, but that it is legal. What the Democrats are trying to do is go one step further and not just put out a smear campaign against Trump. They wanted the FBI to investigate it. And over the course of the FBI investigating this smear piece, they spoke to people who also lied to them as pretending that the smear piece was factual information. Let's see here. So I'm not going to bore you with as boring as this already is. I actually can't believe I'm still talking about the Steele dossier, the piss tapes, as it were, 5 years later. But we're not going to bore you with explaining each and every individual lie that Dachenkov told the FBI, because basically it would require explaining the entire dossier over again, which it's at this point, it's just lies. It doesn't really matter to go through the individual points of it. It's been debunked dozens of times over the last 5 years. This has also not been the first indictment filed by the Durham investigation. Michael Sussman, a lawyer working with the Hillary campaign, pled guilty to lying to the FBI in relation to the dossier as well. Back in September, CNN published an article titled, "Is This All the Durham Investigation Has?" mocking the fact that only a low-level Hillary Clinton operative has been charged with a crime. Durham's answer appears to be no. The investigation continues, and more indictments are planned. I guess we'll see if maybe Dachenkov has a shorter life expectancy than maybe he had before. I guess we'll see if the Clinton body count goes up or down with this one. Alrighty. That was a short update. This is going to be a short show tonight, I'm hoping. If you guys have been following the channel, you know that I've been covering the Kyle Rittenhouse trial every day for the last 4 days. This will be my 5th day straight of streaming. It's a lot of streaming. So tonight will be a little bit shorter, and that's why. Let's see here. So our next story is the election results from the various elections that were taking place last week. We talked about that last week. I warned that there was going to be some pretty major elections coming up this past week, and all of them were going to have national ramifications for the national politic. Now that the results are in, let's take a look at what all that means. The biggest race, perhaps, the one that everybody was most focused on, was Virginia, where I don't know if it was surprisingly that the Republicans won, but it was definitely surprising that they won by such a large margin. Let's see here. So Republicans took the governor's seat, the lieutenant governor's seat, and the attorney general for the states, for the state of Virginia, which that's a pretty big deal. In New Jersey, the Dems very narrowly got their governor's seat, which there was some funny business with the vote totals, which I might go into here in a minute. But again, very narrowly did the Democrats win New Jersey. New Jersey is supposed to be a blue as can be state, and they were narrowly eking out by like a 0.5% a win for the governor's seat. And as is expected by the Democrats, during the vote totals, the vote tallying, there was some, perhaps suspect events that went on, which I might cover here in a second. The most infamous race this week, though, perhaps the most surprising, not necessarily the most important, but definitely the most surprising, was also in New Jersey, which was supposed to be a shoo-in race for the Democrat state senator, who the incumbent Democrat was a state senator and was actually the president of the state Senate House, or the state Senate. And he was overturned by truck driver Edward Durr, former truck driver. Nothing wrong with being a former truck driver. And in fact, it's quite likely that he was otherwise gainfully employed as a truck driver until Joe Biden, the Biden economy, as it were, found him to be unemployed, and then he had no choice but to run for Senate. If the Democrats want to keep their seats, maybe they should stop forcing Republicans and working people to be unemployed. Because if people are unemployed and don't have nothing better to do, perhaps they'll run for your seat. It's been falsely reported, but also very funly reported, that Edward Durr had only spent $153 on his political campaign, 63 of which was itemized for Dunkin' Donuts, and that he was somehow able to unseat a Democrat establishment machine who had been spending millions of dollars on his campaign. However, this number of $153 is, while it's fun, a lot of people are still reporting that, even though it's false. In an interview, Edward Durr said that he spent closer to $5,000, which is still, again, going against a incumbent Democrat. Give me a second here. Apologize for that. He spent only $5,000, but going up against a incumbent Democrat who's been spending millions of dollars, that's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal. Basically, his campaign involved a Instagram video that he shot on his cell phone, and that was about it. He, during an interview this week after being elected, a lot of people asked him, well, what's your plan? What are you going to do when you get to Congress? Obviously state Congress. And his response was very humble. He basically said, I don't know. I'm going to get there, see what needs to be done, and I'll start working on it from there. Which I think that, all of these politicians that we have all over the country with their, 12-point plans to redefine your life and re-engineer the economy and, build back all the stuff that they destroyed better. I think that the humbleness of just saying, I'm not going there with a specific plan to do anything to anybody, but if something needs to be done, I guess I'll do it. Hopefully he will help dismantle some of the nonsense that New Jersey surely has in their state legislature, but that remains to be seen. Hopefully Edward Durr represents a point of inspiration for other shall we say, middle-class working people to run for their elected office around the country. That would be great. We also had New York City. There was an election for city mayor. The city mayor is now a supposedly pro-police Democrat. That was one of his defining campaign promises was that he was not part of the defund the police movement with the Democrats. He was a Democrat, but he was pro-police and was looking to basically rebuild the police department that's been destroyed under de Blasio. Minneapolis also had some measures on the ballot to defund the police and replace the police with a social workers program. The people of the city of Minneapolis very surprisingly decided they would rather keep their police. Minneapolis, the home of the defund the police movement, and they voted, actually, we're going to keep our police. So after this, this was kind of widely categorized as a red wave, a bloodbath perhaps for the Democrats, certainly a red wave for the Republicans. Even the races that the Republicans lost, these were usually races that were supposed to be lost by the Republicans, but the margins were very, very close. It was also theorized, as we spoke about last week, that the aftermath from this would be if the Republicans did well, which they did. I theorized last week, along with a lot of other commentators, that this would spook centrist Democrats in Congress, and that perhaps they would realize that America didn't really send Joe Biden to the White House to implement radical change, and that really the 2020 election was just anti-Trump, not pro-Democrat, which is a big difference there. People can not like Trump and they'll pull the lever for Biden, but that does not mean that they sent Biden to the White House to have this radical pro-Democrat agenda that Biden seems desperate to force down everybody's throats. It was widely believed that a Republican win in the major races on Tuesday would, which they did deliver, would stop the centrist Democrats and from passing the infrastructure bill. And it would also stop the squish Republicans from also voting for Biden's infrastructure bill, because they would say, hey, you know what? The country appears to not be enjoying Democrat policy. Perhaps we shouldn't be voting for Democrat policy if we would like to keep our Senate or our House and Senate seats. But unfortunately, we found out late last night, early this morning, that was incorrect. That was an incorrect analysis. Well, I'll explain here in a second. Yes, Triumvirate, we've gone back in time. You're welcome. Let's see here. So what was wrong with the analysis that a red wave would stifle any Democrats or squish Republicans for voting for Democrat policies? The key flaw in that analysis is the assumptions that Democrats care about what you think. But they don't. They hate you, and we should have known that, right? They don't like you. They hate you. They don't give a damn if you support them or not. They have power right now, and so they're going to use power right now. They don't care about later on, because their hope is that later on won't matter. And so that leads us to what happened this morning. In the wee hours of the night, slightly after midnight, was the House of Representatives passed the infrastructure bill. Joe Biden's infrastructure bill was passed about 18 hours ago, which is, Friday night at midnight, Saturday morning at 1 a.m. That's when all of the most above board bills are passed, in the light of day where everybody can see them. Everybody knows the most trustworthy legislation gets passed in the middle of the night on a weekend. Clearly. The infrastructure bill ended up passing this morning with the support of a bunch of Democrats who I project are likely to lose their seats in a fair midterm election next year. And also, I guess unsurprisingly, but very disappointingly, the infrastructure bill passed with the votes of 13 Republicans, all of which need to be primaried. The vote on the infrastructure bill is actually very, very close. It was 221 for it against 213 against it, which means that the 13 Republicans who switched sides are entirely to blame for this. If even 6 of them had peeled off and voted against it, that would have shifted the vote totals back to not passing the bill. Certainly all 13 of them, they could have definitely secured not passing this. Why did they choose to give Joe Biden this win? I don't know, but they need to be primaried. Surprisingly, the Squad, who was widely believed to be the group that was going to be able to hold this up, the Progressive Democrats, the Squad still voted against it. So the Squad has not been happy. The Progressive Democrats have not been happy with the negotiations as to what is going to be in the infrastructure bill, with what's going to be in the Build Back Better Act. They've not been happy with that, and they said, we're not going to vote for anything unless we get our stuff that we want. And somehow the Democrats were able to swing some Republicans over and disarm the progressives. Their no votes no longer mattered, and for some reason these Republicans decided to pitch in with Biden. I say that they need to get pitched out of office at the midterms any way possible. Let's see here. And I said earlier, why did they do this? Why was the calculus that realizing, this red wave during this election cycle, why would that have slowed them down? The reason why that didn't slow them down, the reason why the Democrats aren't scared of what the people will think at midterms, is because they hate you. How do we know this? Well, we're going to take a look at the analysis from various media outlets of what happened this week. This is a supercut of various media outlets, all describing what they think the reason for the red wave was, and you might figure out why the Democrats, they don't really care what you think after you listen to this.
Glenn Youngkin played the race card for a reason, because he knows it works on certain white voters.
He did stoke white grievance politics to mobilize a Republican base.
He's laundered Trump's really sort of disgusting, flagrant out racism. He's wrapped it in education.
Education,
right,
which is code for white parents don't like the idea of teaching about race.
That's the fundamental problem for these parents and this anti-CRT movement. They don't like the way whiteness is being portrayed in these new, more inclusive lessons.
This wasn't about those pocketbook issues. This was about how white kids feel talking about what black kids go through.
The subtext of all this was, we can't let these black and brown people run the country.
Glenn Youngkin running on critical race theory that he knew hit a chord around race.
I think all the CRT stuff is trumped up dog whistling.
Some of it was dog whistle racism.
The dog whistle messaging that you saw Youngkin engage in during the course of the campaign.
CRT is in the latest line of school busing, crosstown busing, welfare queens. You have it. It's in that same line, and you saw it in the results in Virginia.
This more palatable Republican who still uses the same racist themes that Trump did. He just packaged them in a soccer dad sweater vest model.
He's found a way to launder a pretty racist trope, this idea that we cannot talk about America's history because it hurts my feelings. He's turned that into a campaign.
White voters do have anxiety about a changing America, right? That it is blacker, it is browner.
You've got the Republicans yelling like, hey, look, the black and brown folks are coming for us.
Some Republican candidates are perfectly willing to use race as a motivating factor for their base. That has gone on for decades, and it happened this year.
Race is just the most palpable tool in the toolkit. It used to be of the Democratic Party back in the day when they were Dixiecrats, and now of the Republican Party.
This is about the fact that a good chunk of voters out there are okay with white supremacy. Let's call a thing a thing. Actually, scratch that. They are more than okay.
All right. See, they didn't lose this week. There wasn't a red wave because America doesn't want socialism, because America doesn't want a great reset. No, America does want socialism. America does want a great reset. It's just that they're all racist. You're a racist. Everybody's racist. And really, if everybody would stop being a racist, then everyone would accept Democrat policies. So, there's really no need for Democrats in Congress to be cautious about what they're voting on, because it doesn't really matter. Why would you care what a bunch of racists think about you? So this was the Democrats out last week. And really, we probably should have seen this coming. The idea that a red wave would cause Democrats to be cautious when have they ever been cautious? That was probably not the best analysis by anybody in this industry. And the we clearly overlooked the, oh, we're going to ignore you because you're a racist argument. Maybe because that argument's getting a little stale at this point, and so we're just not thinking about it. But that is the Democrat policy now, is that it doesn't really matter if America wants what the Democrats are trying to do, because America's racist, and why would you want to listen to a bunch of racists? Nope, the Democrats know better. They're just going to do it. You have to deal with it. All right, so the Virginia race actually represented a 18-point swing as compared to what happened last election cycle with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. They had an 18-point swing or 18-point difference in Virginia a year ago, and then this year, now that you've got Youngkin, the Republican, winning, that represents an 18-point swing to the red. Somebody has done a couple of people have done electoral maps showing what would 18-point swings in every state look like, and it looked in the midterms and in the next presidential election. And an 18-point swing obviously has basically every state going red. Even if it's only a 10-point swing in every state, Republicans will still sweep Congress next year, and in 3 years they'll have all three branches in 2024, if, of course, the country's still around by then, which is, not a guarantee. But what this shows is that clearly in these states that had the option, they're already swinging to the right as quickly as they can. Joe Biden, part of what I just was explaining is that the Democrats don't appear to be slowing down. They're doubling down on calling you all racist, which is a large reason why Virginia went so red, was because the parents were tired of being called racist. They were tired of the sexual revolution stuff, poisoning their children. That was a big reason why it went so red. And so the Democrats looking at what happened and saying, you know what, we're going to double down on all this. We're going to call everybody even more racist. We're going to try and push even more CRT. We're going to try to push even more weirdly sexualized pedophilic content into the school system. We're going to continue to double down on that. I really don't see why at midterms there wouldn't be similar red swings in every state. And if they double down on it again, then I really don't see why there wouldn't be red swings in the next presidential cycle. There's nothing regulating that swing right now. There's no reason why it wouldn't keep happening, because the thing that's causing it is the Democrats overreaching on racial and sexual issues, and the Democrats are just continuing to do that. There's nothing stopping them or slowing them down from doing that. So the reaction of the red wave, that's only going to keep getting bigger and bigger. All right. Next story is a little bit related to this, and that is about just kind of the in general, the casual racism of the Democrats and of the of the Democrat scientists. We'll call them. We'll make a distinction and call them Democrat scientists. So as you can see, I've got up on the screen here. Pew Research Center this week decided to put out a Pew Research, if you're not aware, they do statistics, like population statistics, about all kinds of different things. A lot of their more interesting stuff has to do with opinion polling, but they do just broad level stats and research on all kinds of different topics. Everything you can think of, Pew Research Center does research on. This week, they decided to publish research on skin color shades, which is a little strange. Ben Shapiro commented that he's looking forward to Pew Research's study of phrenology, which, if you don't get that joke, look up phrenology. It's funny. But basically, there's no reason to, for what reason would a national science institute like Pew Research Center, what reason could they possibly have for publishing research data on the let's see, as they wrote here, the distribution of skin color among U.S. Hispanics? Why? What? Who was clamoring for this research? How was it paid for? Why was it needed? It's not to say that certain things shouldn't be studied, but it's just, you should probably have a reason why. And the reason why you might study skin color shades most of those reasonings are going to end up being racist. As for the scientific benefit of it, I don't see much. Perhaps Pew explains it deeper in their research, but I can almost guarantee you it's probably not. I know that they've done a lot of other scientists have kind of throughout the years done these weird racial studies. I know that there's been this big search in genetics for the quote unquote gay gene, so that you'd be able to identify genetically if somebody was gay or not. A lot of just weird attempts at categorizing these superficial qualities, which typically throughout history, research related to skin colors has not been used by the good guys. I'll just put that out there. You know, if you're going to try to guess what is the result of doing this detailed research on skin color shades, you can pretty much be guaranteed that looking throughout history, it wasn't the good guys that were doing this kind of research. But that is the direction that the left is attempting to push the country. The left clearly has a stranglehold over scientific institutions. Not necessarily a stranglehold, but more that they've infiltrated them. And this is the result. You've got a couple decades of racial essentialism on the left, making its way through the universities and academics, and then making its way out into the scientific establishment. And here you go. I mean, it's almost unsurprising that a bunch of racial essentialists on the left thought that, hey, let's start categorizing people by skin tone, because that's always led to good things in history. Why don't we start categorizing them? It's just, it makes you wonder. Another story that's kind of related to this is that basically Democrats have just totally lost the plot when it comes to race in general. They looked at, in the story that we just covered about the Virginia election, the lieutenant governor is a black Jamaican immigrant who is also a Marine. She's had a extremely fascinating life, and she's pretty interesting to listen to. But she is black, and she beat out her opponent was a old white guy. If you remember Virginia is the state that until recently had a governor. Actually, I believe that he's still the governor right now because they haven't been installed as a full governor yet. So the current governor of Virginia, who's now a lame duck, Ralph Northam, famously either wore blackface or a Klan's hood when he was in college. And that racist old white man was just beat out by a black lieutenant governor now, who's also a veteran. And so, the left, as you just saw that montage, the left trying in vain to explain why did the Republicans take Virginia, everything was about racism. And so apparently it's racist to elect a black lieutenant governor. That's just racism, apparently. If you're white and you voted for a black person, you're a white supremacist. The now defeated Democrat candidate for Virginia governor was Terry McAuliffe. McAuliffe defended Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, who famously, as I said, dressed in a Klan hood or blackface, and was a proponent of critical race theory. Surprise, surprise, the person who was wearing a Klan hood is a proponent of racial essentialism in Virginia schools. Again, what does CRT teach? CRT teaches that black people are inherently inferior and that you must, through the legislative process, artificially elevate them because based on their skin tone, they're incapable of achieving anything on their own. That's what CRT teaches. But this ideology, this racism, was beat by Youngkin and Winsome Sear. Winsome Sear is this black Jamaican lady, also a Marine, who I was telling you about. And Sears being a black conservative female immigrant, the Democrats claim, they always claim that minorities need to be more represented. And I can't really think of anybody who's better representative of America than an immigrant Marine. her color and gender completely aside, anybody who's a Marine is probably going to be a pretty good representative of America. And the Democrats claim to want all this, representation. So she covers all the bases that I've got, where, she probably has some pretty good ethics and morals. She seems to have decent philosophy from what I've seen from her so far. And for the Democrats, she's black, she's a woman, she's an immigrant. That should check all their boxes on both sides. There should be universal bipartisan agreement that Winsome Sear is a great person to be lieutenant governor. However, when the left talks about wanting to see more black people represented in either companies or in politics, what they really mean is that they want black people who follow the Democrats. Any black person who doesn't follow the Democrats, well, they're not real black people. As Joe Biden famously said, if you don't know if you're going to vote for me or Trump, then you're not black. And also Ayanna Pressley, a couple of years ago, also famously said that she wants black faces, she wants black faces that are black voices, not black faces that are not black voices. She doesn't want black people who don't only focus on their race. When they say black culture and white culture, the Democrats are really just like the old school racist Democrats. They've never really changed. They think that skin color is determinant of your political philosophy, and that if your political philosophy differs from what they think it should be based off your skin tone, then you're some kind of aberrant. You're not really black unless you believe all the things the Democrats do. You're not really white if you, well, I guess white people are the only ones with agency, according to the Democrats. White people can be whatever you want. Black people can't be, apparently. So again, just weird. I don't know. I guess it's not weird because it's something that they've always done throughout all of history. It's just weird to see it resurfacing so overtly, this racial essentialism. I'm curious to see the Pew Research distribution of skin color and IQ. I can't wait for them to come out with that one. Maybe they could do skin color by crime statistics. Perhaps they could do that as well. But basically, as I said, if you look throughout history and you look at which side was trying to categorize people by skin tone, it typically wasn't the good guys. It's one of those easy shorthanded ways of figuring out which side's the correct side of history, so to speak. Alrighty. Our next story is about vaccine mandates. Vaccine mandates are here. And basically, Fauci's taken some time off from killing puppies to talk to Congress, which we'll get into in a second here. Alrighty. Give me just a second. Triumvirant's asking in chat, why not eye color and hair color? Well, I mean, they only have so much time in a day, Triumvirate. I mean, I'm sure that they'll get to it eventually, but they've only got so much time. Alrighty, so the story we're going to read is from the Daily Wire, and the reason why is because Daily Wire has raised its hand to be the primary corporation leading the fight against the federal government with this vaccine mandate. So I figured it would make sense just to read their article about what it is that they're doing so you can get it from them as kind of the primary source. I actually, as a result of the Daily Wire stepping up to take on the legal burden of going after the federal government to reject the vaccine mandate, I have renewed my subscription to the Daily Wire. I had previously canceled it for personal reasons. Well, not personal reasons. It wasn't like financial reasons. It was I had some disagreements with certain Daily Wire members. But I've since re-upped my subscription to give them a couple bucks a month to continue this fight, because that's important to me, and I would like to see them win. I'm not saying that you have to, but it's something that if you would like to see the government defeated in this vaccine mandate, like I said, Daily Wire is going to be the primary legal challenge to it thus far. If you would like to see that through, there is a tangible way you can help by subscribing to the Daily Wire and purchasing one of their subscription packages. Just a thought. Alrighty, so the Daily Wire starts off their piece here. Why the Daily Wire and ADF are partnering to challenge Biden's vaccine mandate. Alrighty, so Daily Wire says, well, there we go. Let's read through here. So the vaccine mandate, Daily Wire starts off. The vaccine mandate the Biden administration imposed is one of the more egregious abuses of federal power in recent memory. Nowhere does our Constitution confer upon the federal government authority to force private citizens to inject vaccines into their bodies, nor does it allow the federal government to dragoon private employers on pain of massive fines into compelling that same result. Dragoon. Try using that. That's the word of the week, guys. You have to use dragoon in a sentence in public this week. That's your challenge. All right. An absence of legal authority, however, seemingly poses no constraint on the administration's ambition to decide for all Americans how they should protect themselves from COVID-19. When he, Joe Biden, announced the vaccine mandate, President Biden said his decision is, quote, not about freedom or personal choice. My job as president, Biden said, is to protect all Americans, but not their freedoms. All right, this gets it backwards. The Constitution confers only select enumerated powers on the federal government for the very purpose of making space for freedom and self-government. The president's job is to faithfully discharge constitutional duties first and foremost. If he lacks power to take a certain action, no matter how seemingly urgent, it is his duty to not act, generally in deferring to the states to whom the Constitution reserves the power to regulate for health, safety, and welfare of their citizens. Some may perceive the concept of limited government as federalism, the concept of limited government and federalism as quaint or even dangerous in the face of a global pandemic. That's wrong. It's during times of crisis when those bedrock principles must be forcefully asserted. And it's when illegitimate government action comes clothed in the name of public health and safety that those principles must be vigorously defended. Our government has not been immune to abusing its power in times of danger. The Alien and Sedition Act of President Harry S. Truman, seizure of steel mills during the Korean War comes to mind, to name just a few examples. And now the federal government seeks to follow suit in the face of COVID-19. And that is why the Alliance for Defending Freedom is representing the Daily Wire in its lawsuit against the Biden administration to stop its new mandate. The federal government cannot force Americans to choose between vaccination, constant health testing, or unemployment, and it cannot coerce American employers to enforce any such dictate with threat of heavy penalties. This fight is not about whether COVID-19 vaccine is safe, effective, or ethically produced. Many people of good faith have chosen to be vaccinated, including many at the Daily Wire and ADF, this author among them, just like many people of good faith have refrained for reasons of faith, consciousness, health, and or personal choice. Rather, this fight is about whether the decision to vaccinate belongs to the person whose body is most directly affected or to the federal government bureaucrats residing in Washington, D.C. Inherent in our government structure is the principle that most decisions affecting individual citizens should be made at the state and local levels and by individuals themselves, not by the federal government. The devolution of decision-making to those who most directly bear the consequences of those decisions protects individual freedom. It also produces rational outcomes. According to the Mayo Clinic, as of September 2021, more than 80% of adults 65 and older are fully vaccinated. Significant majorities of those aged 18 to 64 are vaccinated. The only demographic with rates below 50% are minors aged 12 to 17. In short, vaccine hesitancy increases as risk of severe COVID-19 infection decreases. So older people who are more susceptible to COVID-19 more likely to be vaccinated. Younger people who are statistically less susceptible to COVID-19 less vaccinated. Daily Wire continues. The Biden administration, however, this exercise in organic decision-making by free citizens is intolerable. The sledgehammer of federal power must be invoked, even if unlawfully, to supplant free choice in favor of, quote, the vision of the anointed, to use a Thomas Sowell phrase. But that sledgehammer will plunge millions of Americans into crisis. Employees will be faced with the loss of employment or burdensome and costly weekly testing. Employers will be saddled with massive compliance costs and impossible decisions about whether to terminate valued employees or face crushing fines. The vaccine mandate is bad policy. It's also illegal. If allowed to stand, it will mark a massive transfer of power from individuals and their local governments to the federal bureaucracy. Such transfers are rarely undone and only embolden greater overreach. If Americans can be compelled to undergo a newly developed medical treatment during a time of real or perceived crisis, further encroachments on freedom, including freedom of speech, liberty, and even religion, will become more likely. That is why the Daily Wire, with the help of the ADF, is challenging this vaccine mandate now. So that is the Daily Wire's reasoning for fighting and kind of what their general plan is for fighting the vaccine mandate. As I said, I have decided to take on financially contributing to them once more due to this, because it's something I believe in. I did a similar thing with Crowder when Crowder was having his issues with YouTube a few years ago. I decided that now was the time to join Mug Club, because Crowder was operating in a space that I thought was worth supporting financially. The Daily Wire is now doing the same, and so I thought it would be worth my money to put that towards the Daily Wire's attempt at undoing this government overreach for multiple reasons. Not saying that you have to do the same, just something to think about. Alrighty. Our additional story alongside COVID here would be Mr. Dr. Puppy Killer himself. Over the last year, it has now become a regular occurrence that Dr. Fauci comes before Congress to be questioned about COVID-19 and specifically his part in authorizing the U.S. funding of the creation of COVID-19 in a China laboratory in Wuhan. Major takeaways from the hearing that happened this week were Fauci defended the vaccine mandate despite the fact that most current COVID infections are coming from COVID variants that evolved after the approved vaccines were put out, meaning the vaccine will be less effective against them. Fauci also discussed how the administration was planning to mandate the vaccine for all children, despite CDC scientists recommending against it, along with FDA scientists who were so forcefully recommending against it, they actually resigned last month. Fauci then went on to defend his authorizing of funding for gain-of-function research the past several years. It was Fauci, that commissioned the redefinition of gain-of-function research the last few months. Gain-of-function research covers a wide variety of methods, or at least that's been the traditional definition, all of these methods involve giving viruses new attributes or functions that are not found in nature. Fauci's, that is the colloquial use, the common use of gain of function, is anytime you are essentially genetically modifying a virus in such a way that it's not found in nature like that. Gain of function research covers, let's see here. So Fauci's defense in trying to redefine what gain of function means is that they have recently decided to make the definition apply to only very specific methods / categories of gain of function research called P3CO, and this requires that the virus being used must be highly infectious and must have high lethality. It's worth noting that COVID was a pandemic, but does not meet the criteria of high lethality. This is an attempt to change the definition of terms to avoid being guilty. Some might call it moving the goalpost. So basically, there was a law that said that gain of function was barred for a certain time. That ban on gain of function research sunset during the Trump administration. It was Fauci's responsibility to inform Trump that Trump needed to specifically and deliberately reauthorize that. Fauci did not do that and then started working on certain kinds of gain of function research. However, what is at issue here is the types of gain of function that he was working on prior to the ban being lifted. And since then, as Rand Paul has continuously called him out over the last year, Fauci and the NIH, which Fauci's the head of, they have redefined what gain of function means so that even though Fauci was breaking the law a couple of years ago, they've now changed the definition of what gain of function is. So now it's not illegal. Now the thing that Congress said you couldn't do, well, Fauci redefined it to be specifically the things that he wasn't doing. Kind of convenient how that works. Alrighty. Our next story is a side story about Kyle Rittenhouse and his trial. I have, as I mentioned earlier, been covering the trial rather closely. We did 4 episodes so far on Kyle's trial, and we've got plans for continuing to do that next week throughout the length of the trial, which is an aggressive stream schedule for me, but I'm doing my best. There was a side story that I mentioned a few days ago during one of my updates that there were some interesting name connections between certain key members of the state and city government who are prosecuting Kyle. And I said that, what my updates were really more about the case. And so I'm going to be covering that kind of side story now, because this doesn't really have to do with the content of the trial, but more of a side story happening outside of the trial here. So this is from the Post Millennial, because no mainstream sources are covering this for obvious reasons. Post Millennial says Kenosha mayor has close family ties to the lead detective prosecuting DA and the prosecuting DA in the Rittenhouse case. Let's see here. So Post Millennial starts off with lots of junk in their articles. Let's see here. With Kyle Rittenhouse trial currently underway, it has been revealed that Democratic mayor of Kenosha, Wisconsin, has a shocking number of familial ties to the prosecution, investigation, and more. Kenosha Mayor John Anteramain, let's go with Anteramain. Yeah, Anteramain. There we go. All right, so pay attention to this name that I can barely pronounce, Anteramain. Anteramain is a last name that you're going to hear a lot, because there's a lot of people in Kenosha with the last name Anteramain. There's a lot of people involved in investigating and prosecuting Kyle Rittenhouse with the last name Anteramain. A lot of people. Very, very well connected. So Kenosha Mayor John Anteramain has been mayor of the city of Kenosha for 6 terms, spanning from 1992 to 2008, and then again from 2016 to 2024, his current term. According to Kenosha County Eye, which I believe is a newspaper in the area, Anteramain is rumored not to be seeking re-election in 2024 due to black backlash from his response to the Kenosha riots last summer. Just to, I'm sure they'll get into it, but what was Anteramain's response to the riots last summer? Well, as we know, the mayor of Kenosha allowed the city to burn. He was a large reason why the police pulled back and allowed rioters to destroy so much property. And the direct result of his decision to pull the police back meant that people like Kyle had to go out to defend property, lest their entire livelihoods be burned to the ground. Let's see here. Post Millennial continues, quote, "We didn't hear from him. He didn't lead," wrote Kenosha County Eye. Quote, "John has a lot at stake in the Rittenhouse trial. He wants Kyle convicted. He wants Kyle to take the blame for and distract us from his failures as our leader. Lucky for John, he has a lot of powerful family members in charge here in Kenosha," they continued. So basically this local newspaper here is positing that Mayor John Antemarain is attempting to use Kyle as the scapegoat for all of the things that went wrong in Kenosha, all the things that went wrong as a direct result of the mayor telling the people, the police, to pull back. Instead of being held accountable for all of that, Antemarain would much rather the country and the city be focused on Kyle Rittenhouse and focused on trying to put him in jail for the rest of his life. The lead detective in the Rittenhouse case is reportedly the mayor's nephew, Benjamin Antemarain, who allegedly wants to connect Rittenhouse to the, quote, Kenosha Guard Facebook page, despite proof from Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg proving otherwise. Here's a tweet from Jack Posobiec, which says, did you know the lead detective in the Kyle Rittenhouse case is the nephew of the mayor who let Kenosha burn? Also, the DA prosecuting Kyle is the mayor's first cousin. Meet the Antemarain family. Huh, that's weird. So, the patriarch of the Antemarain family allows the city to burn. Citizen Rittenhouse decides no. And then to cover up that the city was burning and that resulted in the citizens having to take it upon themselves to defend their community, the Antemarain family sprang to action to prosecute Kyle and investigate all of the things Kyle didn't do wrong. Very, very interesting circle there. Let's see here. It is the mayor's. Wow. Post Millennial, get a. Thank you, Lincoln DMZ, for following. Post Millennial needs to get a copy editor. The mayor, or the mayor's cousin is reportedly the Kenosha City Attorney Ed Antemarain. Mayor Antemarain's nephew is Kenosha's city judge Michael Easton. Another nephew of his is State Representative Thaddeus McGuire. Another cousin of his is County Board Supervisor Laura Belsky, the Kenosha Eye reported. So again, other people who are related to his family but don't share his surname. The Kenosha Eye, a local newspaper, has found him out. Another tweet from Jack Posobiec, who's knitting all these pieces together for us. The mayor who let Kenosha burn, the DA, and the lead detective in the Kyle Rittenhouse case are all members of the same family. Are you paying attention yet? Yeah, it appears that this power family, which this happens in small rural towns sometimes, right? Small rural towns, you'll typically see that there's kind of a family who they got their fingers in a lot of pots there. They are in the government and various big businesses, and they kind of use the city as their little fiefdom here. Kenosha being a very small town, I'm probably the first time ever that they've gotten national attention was after Kyle helped defend it. And prior to then, it sounds like the Antemarains and their extended family were big players all over Kenosha County, and using that to leverage into state congressional positions. A bit of a power family there. And then, Kyle had to go and ruin it all. And so they are throwing the book at him using all of these people who are, all the same family members' names. It's kind of nice that you can have your cousin, the city prosecutor, prosecuting, and your other cousin, who's a detective, investigating the kid that showed how much of an idiot you are for allowing the police to just pull back and let the city burn. So to make up for the fact that Kyle highlighted how awful and dangerous it was for Mayor John Antemarain to allow the city to burn, Antemarain directed his family members to prosecute Kyle. That's essentially what's happening here. Let's see here. Rittenhouse is currently on trial for charges stemming from his alleged actions on August 25th, 2020 during the Kenosha riots, which sparked, we know all that stuff. All right, that's it. All right, so again, just pointing out oddities that everybody seems to know each other but Kyle, and that sometimes happens more on the national scale, but it's just interesting, especially if you've been following my updates on the case coverage. We've been pointing out how the yeah, the state's case against Kyle's not very good. The detective seems to be a little bit biased. There's some weird things that the detectives chose not to investigate. There's weird things that the detectives did choose to investigate. And, it's starting to knit together a little bit of a picture here that perhaps the prosecution of Kyle Rittenhouse is not all on the up and up as they would have us believe. But given how little evidence there is against Kyle, essentially zero, obviously any case against him is fraudulent. It's just now we're maybe going to be able to see specifically what kind of fraudulent is it. And it appears to be there's some kind of family network in Kenosha which would really rather Kyle didn't do what he did. Whatever their reasoning may be, they're leveraging their family members in high-level government positions to accomplish that. Alrighty, so got some Gloria Miller in YouTube chat giving us some based facts from the world. I'm not sure how that relates to the current topics, but that doesn't mean it's not true. All right, our last little story for the night here. This was probably the quickest I've ever gotten through a weekly news recap. But like I said, some of that's because I've probably been streaming for, 8, 9, 10 hours this week. It's a lot. All right, our last little story here is from Joe Biden. What's Joe Biden doing this week? So last week we covered a story that was a little shocking about the Biden administration's plans to pay out $450,000 to illegal immigrants for the trauma of being removed from the country. Obviously, you can go back to last episode to see some more information on that, but obviously, on the surface of it, that seems to be very distressing for American people, American citizens, saying, why are we paying illegal immigrants? Why are we paying criminals $450,000 just for breaking the law? So Joe Biden was away. He was sleeping it off in Europe last week, but he's made it back to the States this week. And Mr. Peter Dossier of Fox News decided to ask Joe Biden about this story. And here is the fun results of that.
Mr. President.
This ought to be good.
I think so too. About the way forward, Mr. President. As you were leaving for your overseas trip, there were reports that were surfacing that your administration is planning to pay illegal immigrants who are separated from their families at the border up to $450,000 each, possibly $1 million per family. Do you think that might incentivize more people to come over illegally?
If you guys keep sending that garbage out, yeah, but it's not true.
So this is a garbage report?
Yeah.
Okay. So
$450,000 per person. Is that what you're saying?
That was separated from a family member at the border under the last administration.
That's not going to happen.
Okay, and then just a follow-up, because you mentioned Trump a couple times. When you went to try to help Terry McAuliffe a couple weeks ago before you left, you mentioned Trump 24 times. Do you still think that voters really want to hear you talking about Trump more than the issues affecting them every day?
Well, the reason I mentioned Trump, if I didn't count the times, is because the issues he supports are affecting their lives every day, and they're a negative impact on their lives, in my view. Thank you all very much.
All right, so we have a direct denial from Joe Biden. We're not going to pay him out $450,000. And I had a little bit of an extra follow-up there that Biden still thinks Trump's relevant, even though currently Trump's not in office. Now, that kind of direct dismissal of a question, the direct denial that we're paying $450,000 to illegal immigrants, even though Peter Dossier and the stories that we had on that last week, those are cited from government sources, from large legal firms suing the federal government releasing information about a plan to do this. So who's lying? Is the these big lawyer agencies, are they lying? Is the federal government lying? Is Joe Biden lying? Who's lying? Somebody's lying. They can't all be correct. Somebody's lying. And so there was a bit of a follow-up the next day at
the president is perfectly
at the White House press conference where Peter Dossier asked for a follow-up question, and this was a response from the White House press conference.
The president is perfectly comfortable with the Department of Justice settling with the individuals and families who are currently in litigation with the U.S. government. You know, DOJ can obviously speak more to that process. The president what he was reacting to was the dollar figure that was mentioned, that you mentioned to him yesterday. As press accounts to date indicate, there's been press accounts on this, DOJ made clear to the plaintiffs that the reported figures are higher than anywhere that a settlement can land. Again, this is something that the Department of Justice can speak to. I do not have anything.
So basically, the response the next day was, well, the DOJ is going to be paying out people money, and Joe Biden's fine with them paying out people money. It's just Joe Biden was shocked that it'd be $450,000, and Joe doesn't really know what it is. He just thinks $450,000 is a lot. And so he said no. But basically, the follow-up response here was that the story that we're going to be paying illegal immigrants money at all is true. We are going to be giving them money. The what's at dispute here is how much money. And as of right now, I don't think that admission of, well, you know, $450,000 is pretty high. Okay, well, what is the dollar figure? What is the exact dollar amount that we're going to be paying out to illegal immigrants? Until we hear a whatever the new ceiling is for that payout, until we hear direct monetary values from the DOJ for what those settlements are going to be, I don't see any reason to not believe that it's not $450,000. $450,000 is a number that was thrown out by the government already as what the settlements were worth. Now the government's saying, well, it's less than that. Well, how much less? Throw out another number. Let's see another number on that. And you're not going to, because it probably is $450,000. It's probably close to that at least. And even if it's not $450,000, you can almost guarantee that the legal fees being racked up by the federal government to try to, for some reason, litigate these cases. Again, you've got these illegal immigrants suing the federal government for holding them accountable for a crime. Why that's allowed to go to court at all is ridiculous. Why there's a settlement at all is ridiculous. But you can be guaranteed that the legal fees associated with that are also going to be on the hook for the taxpayer. So even if the full $450,000 isn't going to each illegal immigrant, you can be sure that their legal fees definitely are going to hit you, the taxpayer. All right, we got another bonus video here, which I don't know what's in this bonus video, but we're gonna watch it. And see what it says. Let's see here. I'm supposed to start at 2:12. Let's find. There we go. All right. Let's watch this mystery video, which I believe is from a different White House press conference.
Any more than that?
Okay, final one then. There is a long line to get into this country legally. Is there any kind of discussion about giving people who are coming here the right way money?
Why would we be giving people who are coming here the right way money?
Why are you giving people who came here the wrong way?
I mean, but I don't understand the question. What is you're saying that we should give people just money who are coming through? I don't understand the question.
You're giving people who immigrated here illegally money.
Like I said, that's the Department of Justice. You're going to have to ask them that question. Okay.
Oh, that was pretty good. So Peter Dossier calling out the logical flaw there. Well, if you're going to give money to people who immigrated here the wrong way, why wouldn't you give money to the people who immigrated here the right way? And her response of, well, why? That's crazy. That's such a stupid question. Why would you ask me? Why on earth would we give money to people who came here the right way? That's such a stupid question, Peter Dossier. You're a big dumb dorky dummy head. That's what you are. Why would you even think that? And then he responds, well, I don't know. If it doesn't make sense to give money to people who immigrated here legally, why would you give money to people who immigrated here illegally? To which she actually physically chokes on her words. Alrighty. Well, thank you very much, Adder Lupus. I appreciate your viewership. I really do. As much as you guys appreciate me streaming, I appreciate far more your viewership. I really do. And thank you. You're welcome, Triumvirate. That's the correct response, right? You're welcome, Triumvirate. You're welcome, Adder Lupus. But thank you to you guys as well. Much appreciated. Alrighty, that is the show for tonight. That has got to be a record for how quickly we have done the Direwolf News Weekly, or Direwolf Media Weekly News Recap. As I said, normally we'd have a longer show, but just a little tired today. All right, I am going to the next show will be more Kyle Rittenhouse. Wow, that was a big, Kyle House. The Kyle Rittenhouse trial update. Where we left off yesterday, we had started into the beginning of the Friday testimony and did not finish the rest of the Friday testimony. I am possibly going to be streaming tomorrow, though for sure on Monday. I would like to try to stream tomorrow for the rest of Friday, just because if I go for the rest of Friday and then part of Monday, I'm worried I won't get caught up on that. But we'll see. I Monday for sure, possibly tomorrow, but there will be more updates. I do intend to, even if I find the trial rather interesting. Kind of from a, where's it going to go sense, it's pretty boring, because I think at this point it's pretty obvious that Kyle is either going to be let off, or rather Kyle's either going to be acquitted of all charges, or the jury will be cowards and for unknown reasons or political reasons have a guilty verdict for him, just because, not based on any evidence. The defense's or the prosecutor's case has essentially dissolved this week. So far this week, we've only had witnesses from the prosecutor, and already all of the testimony has been essentially in Kyle's favor. The second group of witnesses is going to be called by the defense. In theory, the defense is going to be having only witnesses that put Kyle in a good light. So as soon as the state prosecutors are done calling people, there's really no more bad stuff that's going to be brought up about Kyle, because only the defense is going to be bringing up their witnesses. So I would say the case is essentially over from a, just what are the facts on the ground standpoint. All of the key points that the state made during their opening statements have all been debunked already by the state's own witnesses. There is no case there. So, is it necessary to continue doing updates? I think so. I know a lot of other commentators are doing quicker updates of, Kyle's crushing it, and the defense is completely dominating, and the state prosecutors are totally dissolved, they're buffoons and all this stuff. And yeah, that's all true, but I don't think I need to add my voice to the kind of cheerlead squad for Kyle. So I thought that it would be, of more value to do this deeper dive on the play-by-plays for the case, rather than just doing it at a high level. I might as well not do it at all if I was going to do it at a high level, because there's so many people doing review of the case at a high level. So that's why we're continuing to go through it play by play, giving you a little bit more detail than some of the other commentators are, spending a little bit more time on it, but not as much time as just watching it on your own, which I do recommend. But that is what we will continue doing in the coming week. Even if the case seems to be over, I do want to continue providing commentary and the play by play for all the stuff that's going on, so that you feel like you've watched at least all of the interesting parts, right? Alrighty, guys. Well, like I said, maybe see you tomorrow. Probably see you on Monday for another Rittenhouse update. You guys all have a fantastic weekend. And let's see here. We got some stuff in the chat about some issues with the Streamlabs donation link. That is something I was told last time had some issues with. I should probably do something about that. We will. I will look into the Streamlabs link for next time, and we'll see what we can do about that. I appreciate your attempts, though. We'll be back next week. You guys have a great weekend. This has been Direwolf Media Weekly News Recap. Treves.